Now, you said you've handled avians and wolves. How did you get into animal handling, or what have you?
When I was in graduate school, I was in the laundromat one day.
Okay.
This is true. Stick with me.
Oh, I believe you. Yeah.
I was in the laundromat and I was doing my laundry and I spilled liquid fabric softener on the little folding table, and I didn't want some poor little old lady to come by and put her shirts down in that because it will stain. So there was some newspaper there, and I tore off a piece of newspaper and I started to try to mop up the fabric softener, and I noticed on that piece of newspaper there was a little thing that the local nature center was looking for volunteer docents, and they would train. And I thought, interesting. I need something to do on weekends. Why not? Why not? I kind of tore that piece off, wiped off the fabric softener from it, and started thinking of calling them. And I waited a couple of weeks, and then finally made up my mind. I called them and said, "Hi, I'd like to." Now, they had a training class that we went to, and they taught us how to educate, how to speak to the public, how not to talk down to them, what to do with kids and everything. And they said, "Okay, we're a bird of prey outfit." And they brought in a bunch of birds of prey, a bunch of hawks, a bunch of owls, and they had them up front. There was one particular red-tailed hawk that, to my fancy, seemed to keep looking at me. So when they were pairing us up, I said, "Can I meet that red tail over there?" So they put this big glove on my arm, plopped him on my arm, and walked away. I'm sitting there like, and he just sat there looking at me. That exact kind of motion. I still keep his picture in my wallet here.
Awesome.
That was him. His name was Red. It's a national law. Every nature center has to have a red-tailed hawk named Red. It's
really?
Yeah.
Really?
It's law.
Congress requires it.
It's a amendment to the Constitution, in fact. So
Really?
Red and I were a teaching team for about 3-4 years until I finished my graduate career, and hardest thing I left behind was him, because I think we made a really, really good team.
Better than you and Alkali?
Red wasn't as squishy, and he tended to be a lot more pointy if he got angry at me. See, Alkali is easygoing. Red had these big, like 10-penny nails on the tips of his fingers. Mm-hmm. But we still got along.
And Alkali's a little basic for you.
Exactly. Don't make me throw things at you.
Sorry.
It's all right.
A chemistry joke. I couldn't resist.
All right. Now, one of the things they stressed in us, and anybody who handles wild animals is told the same thing. These are not people. Do not anthropomorphize them. Oh, that's tough. How can you not? That's what we do. So, publicly at least, we had to emphasize the fact that this is not a pet. This is a wild animal. I mean, we're not friends. He tolerates me. He wouldn't care if I fell in a hole tomorrow, because he's an asshole. That's how hawks are. But it was difficult. I had to anthropomorphize. I still remember our bachelor's night out that we had. I was doing a program way off in a distant town on a Saturday, and by the time I got back, it was well after dark. And he was riding in the back of my car in a big wooden box.
You had Red with you?
Yeah, I brought him with me.
Oh, you were doing a program.
Yes, exactly. So he and I traveled to do the program. That nature center at the time didn't have any lights out in the bird cage area. Mm-hmm. So I was a little nervous about trying to put him back in a pitch dark night. There was no moon, no stars, no anything. So I figured I'll take him back in the morning, and we just went to my place. I took him out of his box, put him on a T-perch, and we just sat. I put on a movie or something, sat and ate some Cheetos, and he just kind of sat there and hung out. I went to bed, and when I woke up in the morning, he had his head tucked under his wing. He was all asleep. And I made a little bit of noise, and he pulled his head out, fluffed up all his feathers, shook them out again, and looked at me like this. There is no choice but to interpret that gesture as, oh God, it's still here. So that was our relationship.
My misunderstanding in the initial part of that story, I thought you were saying you went to a bachelor party.
No.
And then having Red with you was just a little bit, okay, yes,
That
you
would have
did
been weird. That would have been weird.
And then going to your place after.
Yeah. Well, the wolves came later. There was a convention that annually supported Wolf Park, which is in Battleground, Indiana. And I went to that convention frequently, and I usually wind up being the charity guy. So I did the auction for them, helped them raise money, and as a reward, they let me go to the park and basically let me play with the wolves. It's very, very important, if no one has ever done this, to remember that these are, again, wild animals. They look like dogs, they act like dogs, but they're not dogs. Wolves have certain instincts that we have bred out of the domestic canine, and one has to have a little bit of training before one goes in. For example, if you approach a wolf, you don't pet it on top of the head. That's an assault, and they will fight back. You go under here, so they can still feel it. And under no circumstances, do you grab a wolf by the ears and go wugga 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 wugga. They don't like that at all.
I can understand that. I don't think I'd like it either.
I know. That's the first thing they tell you. Don't do the wugga wugga thing on wolves. You'll come back with nothing from the elbow down.
I will bear that in mind. And you are one of the founders of
I wouldn't say
Anthrocon?
founder. There was a little convention in Albany, New York, Albany Anthrocon. They had me as their guest of honor in 1998, and whatever series of events transpired, they asked me if I would take over as chairman. And I told them, okay, I had been going to science fiction conventions as well as furry conventions since 1980, so nearly 20 years by this point. So I volunteered, I had some experience, and I told them, listen, if you want this thing to succeed, if you want it to continue, you cannot run it like a bunch of high school kids having a party. You've got to run it as a business. So I founded Anthrocon Incorporated, wrote the Articles of Incorporation, got a tax ID and a logo and all that official corporate stuff. It's a non-profit organization, Pennsylvania-based. Named a board of directors, specifically gave the board of directors the power to overrule me, because the last thing I wanted was to be a dictator. You cannot run an organization through dictatorship. There has to be checks and balances, but I'm preaching now.
Understood.
I think I must have done something right, because Anthrocon is approaching its 20th year of operation, and we just keep getting bigger. We're nearly 6,000 people now, and we've got an entire city. The city of Pittsburgh is behind us. They get into it. We are an annual feature of the city. So
really,
I kind of like that. I like being in that position.
Very cool. And what sort of things do you do at Anthrocon that might be unique to your venue and event?
Oh boy. Well, most conventions tend to do the same things. We have an art show. We have a dealer's room. Anthrocon's uniqueness comes in sheer size. Our art show covers a footprint that is bigger than half of the furry conventions out there. Our dealer's room has more than 200 individual dealers in it. We get all of the costumes, the fursuits as we call them, together in a parade through the convention center. This past year, I believe we exceeded 1,400 individual costumes in the parade.
Wow.
So it is a spectacle, really, to behold. So that's where Anthrocon gets its uniqueness. It's just in quantity, really. You can find just about anything there. There are dealers, artwork, and friends. most people at some point, and this sounds dreadfully arrogant, most people at some point have either been or want soon to go to Anthrocon. It's sort of the furry place to go. That's what people say. I don't say that, other people say that. But again, it's a nice position to be in.
Right.
But that does come with quite a lot of responsibility. Even though I've got directors handling the primary day-to-day operations, the big stuff is still my responsibility. And in the end, anything that goes wrong is my responsibility. It can be a lot of pressure. I mean, look what it does to you. I'm 23 years old.
Sure you are.
Yeah, that's what it does.
Then I'm 3.
It's true.